past, great beings would go to a place, they would practice, they would attain realization, and they would bless the place. These days, many of us within this tradition go to those places to receive some of those blessings from those great beings. So when Tibetan lamas or when ordinary people, not even dharmic people, come to a place where there's been a lot of spiritual growth and development and realization, there is an effect. It does come back on oneself. That's from the spiritual perspective. From the simple perspective, being in natural environments has an effect. And it does make one's mind more relaxed, more open. So if you can combine a beautiful environment that doesn't have the busyness, that doesn't have the distractions, that doesn't have all the stress and anxiety that comes with living in a modern world, combine that with a place where people have been practicing for 1,000 years or 200 years, and where there have been people who have attained realization, there is an effect. These places have an amazing, profound, deep impact if you're open to it. In Tibet, where it's discouraged right now to send one kid off to a monastery or a nunnery, being a nun, it's by choice. You can see from the footage that this is not an easy choice. This is not a lifestyle that is going to be a soft lifestyle where you're going to get fat and just relax. They know what they're getting into. They have to do physical work for a couple years, even before, to support the running of the nunnery and the monastery, before they are able to get more formal training. Usually, you have a certain number of years of doing physical work, and then the nuns are permitted to do certain kinds of practices, certain kinds of retreats, and as they get more and more deeply into retreat, then they go through certain trainings that are more and more strict. In the old days, I believe in Tibet, monasteries and nunneries had land, but also the people around the monasteries and the nunneries, which were the families of the monks and the nuns, they would sponsor the monks and the nuns. And so the monastery itself, particularly with Getchop, you can read in Blazing Splendor where Tanyang Gyatso said he wanted the individual families to give whatever was needed for the nuns, but the nunnery itself would only give food and provisions at the time of the great ceremonies, the drupshins. Now, with the relocation of nomads and the encouraging people to go into cities, and also the attraction of cities, for instance, not everybody who wants to stay in the country, that support basis for the monks and the nuns is dwindling, which is one of the reasons why, older nuns don't have family anymore, or their families have died. So the choice going back to being a nun is not a choice that you're going to be taken care of and that you're just going to sit back and do nothing, or that you're necessarily going to be able to even, sustain yourself. It's a risk that they take. When we went to the Getchop nunnery, the nunnery where the nuns are famous for having dried the sheets, doing Tummo practice, the conditions were pretty bad. Here was a place where older nuns, younger nuns. There was a great need, and they were asking for help. This is something that I hadn't really encountered. I live in a nunnery, I live in a monastery. I know what it's like in places like Nepal and India for many practitioners, and it's not all that difficult. Here it was incredibly difficult, and the most sincere practitioners that I had seen, and they needed help. It wasn't anything that I had any plan about. All of a sudden, I felt moved that I would see what I could do if the circumstances came together, that I could bring financial aid to the old nuns and also medicine to all of them. So it came about as a coincidence, as kind of an offshoot of something else with no intention at all. When I also had gone to Satral's place, Satral showed me this kind of funky building that he had, where he said he really had hope in the future that he could have a clinic to help all the local people. So he had the vision from the very beginning. And he didn't have many people to help him, so in addition to being inspired by the practitioners, I was also inspired by the dedication of this Lama, Tulku Rinpoche, in a very remote area, who had built the Bodha Stupa, a replica, so that old people could die in a place where they felt they were connected to the Dharma, and his wish that he could then help the people through medicine. Our primary team was Frances Howland, who's a medical professional who has a lot of experience in Tibet and in rural regions. We had one translator, a Canadian nun named Tenzing Chisholm, and we had a Tibetan doctor, Carol Dunham, who is an American, but also a filmmaker, who brought another friend of ours, Jen Sharon, to actually film this and to take it a little bit further. We had one of the people who was underwriting the actual travel expenses, Graciela, who's actually in the rent-a-car business in Italy and in Switzerland. So all of a sudden we had this diverse group of people from several different countries, and there was just a kind of synergy amongst all the people and a real joy and harmony about how this unfolded, so that there was never any conflict, and everything was accomplished even in some of the roughest conditions, and altitude sickness and no toilets, etc., etc., in a really, spontaneously beautiful way. Woohoo! Respiratory problems, stomach problems, joint problems. Some things could be treated by Western medicine. Chronic long-term diseases were better treated by Tibetan medicine. So I think that's how we would make the dividing line. And some things couldn't be treated at all.
Can you see the light? Because if they can't see the light, they can't do surgery anyway. How many fingers am I holding up? Okay, so he has a cataract and he needs surgery, very simple surgery. There's an organization called Saver that work in this area. And I know I've already met many people in Jaku who've had the surgery. They take the cataract out and they'll put a lens in.
This woman is saying that she's numb all over her body, and so these are kind of things that are difficult in Western medicine to necessarily diagnose. And here we actually have a medicine for that, so they see it as a spirit disease.
Sorry, what was wrong with him again? I mean, apart from the cough, there was something
Cough,
else.
when having the cough,
Oh, diarrhea of the stool, yeah.
it's difficult to breathe, take the breath. And also usually he is having stomach pain.
Does he have diarrhea? Was the stool normal? His lungs don't sound clear. It doesn't sound like pneumonia, it sounds more like a bronchitis. Because with pneumonia, you'd be breathing fast. But he also has a fever over 100. So just because we can't, if we could see him again, we'd just say keep him warm and bring him back if he doesn't get better, but as we can't, and we know most children die here of pneumonia or diarrhea, so we'll just treat him. But first, he's to chew this and swallow this.
Ah, goodbye.
So Kilsung, this woman, she was asking for an injection, is that right? Yeah? She doesn't understand, so she thinks that an injection will help her, yeah? Yeah. And what did you tell her?
I told her we don't have the lungs injection, but we have medicine for this.
Yes, but she thinks that an injection is what will help cure her and is what the best is, because it's a common belief and idea around here.
There's a lot of training that I think needs to occur and a lot of cultural ideas that need to shift, because now patients will ask, they want to have injections, and this is becoming part of the traditional Tibetan medicine.
Well, it looks like all the other clinics we've been to on this trip at the monasteries and nunneries, which is very cosy and friendly, part of somebody's house. The only problem is there's always lots of intravenous injections, and so far we haven't met any Amchis who are traditionally Tibetan medicine trained. We haven't met any who've had any Western medicine training. So that in itself is always a risk when they're giving intravenous injections without having been trained.
We'd like to do a prototype, and a successful prototype in all kinds of development work and also with fundraising. If you have a successful model and you do it correctly, then you can reproduce that if you get it right. So we're starting out with trying to build 2 clinics, hopefully with a birthing center. And what we are really interested in, aside from the quick fixes of the building and supplying the medicine, is long-term training, so that we can actually train medical practitioners. We can train the Tibetan doctors, get them further training in Tibetan medicine, and get them some preliminary kind of training in Western medicine, and also find a non-monastic person who is trained medically to be in those clinics and assist the Tibetan doctors as well. It's the first time that I've directly been involved with humanitarian projects. Most of the projects that I'm involved in from the spiritual level are very dharmic Buddhist projects where you're helping practitioners, you're helping to create environments primarily for refugee community in Nepal and in India. It's a matter of looking at the donor, looking at what's something that will speak to their heart and which will also fulfill some wishes and prayers they may have of where their energy will go. And energy being, money is being energy, but also, I invite donors to come along because I think by seeing the reality of the situation, then they can trust that what they're doing is really valuable. From the dharmic point of view, it's been said, I believe by Milarepa, the great Tibetan saint and mystic, that by connecting with people who are practitioners, who are on a spiritual path, if you yourself are unable to tread upon that path, to be someone who spends their time doing a spiritual practice, Dharma practice. But if you are a benefactor, if you are someone who connects with that person, whatever realization that person has, whatever benefit they have, you share in that. So it's a kind of a two-way street. You give, but you get.